Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third module of the Mill Street Arts Center's Teaching Artist in Schools Academy. I'm Asia Freeman, the Artistic Director of Bunnell Street Arts Center, and since the year 2000, I have been very pleased to coordinate a Artist in Schools program for the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Bunnell is an independent nonprofit organization and receives support for this program from the Alaska State Council on the Arts, with support from Rasmussen Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts, in addition to the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District, which provides matching funds for the Artists in Schools units and corporate support from Almer's Drug and Hardware and the Global Credit Union. So joining me tonight is Sharlene Cline, a master teaching artist that we've been so pleased to work with for many years, and she has worked all over Alaska. Welcome, Sharlene. I'm going to invite you to share a little bit more about yourself, and then perhaps you can invite others into introductions as you see appropriate.
Hi there. Teaching art is so much fun. I feel like I'm the art fairy, and it just brings joy to kids, and they always want to know when I'm coming back, because it's such a gift for them. And so, yeah, I've taught everything from, I'm most known for Chinese painting, from sculpture to murals to mosaics to trash art to ceramics to I know I'm forgetting stuff. Process art. I keep it fresh for myself, and then also I try to hear what schools need and fill their need. So, do you want Asia to just go around and have everyone introduce themselves, since we're a small group,
Yeah, I'd
and
love
where
to
they're
do
from?
that. Yeah, let's just take like 3 minutes each and just kind of circle around to give Sharlene a sense of where you are, where you're coming from, since this is her first time joining us. I'm going to bounce it over to Susan to start that process. And I think you're muted. So
I got it. My hand with the mouse pad. I have let me think. I guess I'm kind of approaching the end of my teaching career as far as thinking about retiring in about 1.5 years, but I've been a teacher in Alaska. I did my student teaching way back in '93. Was kind of excited last week that my teaching practicum was at the same school where the teacher presented last week. Was that Sharlene? Is that right? Anyway, I teach at Kenai Middle School, and I teach the Quest Gifted program. So I get to work with 6th and 7th and 8th. I incorporate a lot of the arts into my classes. Like I'm doing collage art with tied in right now with my 7th graders with studying parts of speech and grammar, like upcycling all these books from Bishop's Attic and stuff. It's been really fun. But and then I also teach journalism, teach world languages, and I'm just kind of an obsessive maker, gatherer, collector, maker. I see the potential in everything that could be something, which my husband's at the other end of the table right now, politely not guffawing. That's yeah. He's very patient with my art collecting and stuff. But I mean, I'm just trying to I was just excited about this class to learn from other people that have traveled around the state and do the art. And I love developing curriculum. So just the idea of what you just said about here, what schools need, and try to find a way to fill that need. I feel like that could be me too. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Awesome.
You want to bounce it over to somebody, Susan? Thank you. And it was Candace who presented last week.
Candace. Well, I'm going to call out Jim, since he's a face I recognize.
Get things fired up here. Yeah, hi, I'm Jim Pfeifenberger. I'm over in Seward. I'm a retired educator for the National Park Service. So I did a lot of education for the Park Service, science education primarily, but I always worked music in where I could, and including, songs that had some science content to them. since retiring, I've had a lot more time to focus on music, and I've done some drumming in schools with here in Seward primarily, and I'm eager to maybe take that outside of Seward and take it to other schools around the peninsula or even around the state. Get back to some of the really amazing villages I got to visit as a Park Service educator, and bring music with me this time, and or rhythm and drumming. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and why I'm participating in the Zooms here. Yeah. Okay, and I'll pass it on to Holly if she wants to chime in.
Can you hear me? Anyone?
Yes.
You can't?
Yes,
Okay,
we can
good.
hear you. We
'Cause
can't
my,
see
my,
you.
my video doesn't work, and sometimes the audio doesn't work. So anyway, so you never, anyway. My name's Holly. I am currently teaching at Ninilchik School as the Title I interventionist. Oh, I'm trying. Oh, start my video? I'd love to. I think that, no, I think there's something wrong with my computer. Apologies.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I don't know what happened. It worked one time, but it didn't work again. So, I am the interventionist, and I am also an artist. And so at the school in Ninilchik, we don't have an art program at all. And all of our teachers are just, they put it in where they can. And so I was hoping to facilitate the Artists in Schools program in any way I can. I'm also an artist and a musician and a singer-songwriter, and have done, different things around the peninsula for many years. And I love fiber arts. So I know as an artist, I would love to be doing something in all of our schools, frankly, that encourages children touching yarn and natural materials and creating with yarn and, other things, spinning wool and all kinds of fun things. But I am here in the capacity as a teacher trying to get artists in the schools at my school. Thank you for doing this.
Terrific. I'm so glad and so excited to get Milchick involved, Holly. I can't tell you. Please choose somebody to pass it on to. Okay,
Maria?
I'm just going to nominate Daniel.
Yeah. Maria,
Okay.
hug Maria there.
Okay. Oop, I think, are you muted? Maybe just some volume. You got your volume up, Maria? Well, I can't hear you. I'm going to wing it and give Maria an introduction because I know her a little bit from Homer. She's her kids go to Chapman School, and she's a mother of, is it 5 kids? 4 wonderful kids. And she is a wonderful painter who was trained as a motorcycle mechanic by Harley Davidson and worked in that capacity for several years. And just has shifted more into her own art and into studying and creating and thinking about training as a teaching artist. And if there's anything else I'm missing from anybody, please feel free to put things in the chat. We want to make use of that tonight. So really glad that you're here, Maria. And I'm going to pass it to Daniel. Are you there, Daniel?
Yeah. Hello, I am Daniel Dobroshelski. Sharlene, I believe I took one of your brush painting classes, the kelp one, back, I don't remember when, but sometime this year. I am a puppet and animation artist. And animation has been sort of a newer thing for me since like really only the past 4 years, but it's been something I've been really enjoying, and being able to combine sort of that the art of puppetry and sort of finding a way to bring it towards animation. So stop motion is a big thing. I live here in Homer. Recently moved. It was last year. So I've been here for a full year. So that's exciting. And yeah, and so I've joined this this academy to find out how I could bring some of my art to the local area, and also as a way to sort of start meeting other people that are interested in bringing their arts to other places. So been very excited about everything thus far. So thank you.
Well, it's really awesome to see these familiar faces, these diverse, widespread, and really talented artists joining for this academy. And I'm so excited to connect you all with Sharlene, who's a great resource and who's our main presenter tonight as a very experienced teaching artist. So I'm going to pop right into our screen share, and I want to make sure that you all can see our slides. Yeah, good. Thank you for the thumbs up, Susan. We've done slide 1, introductions. I'm going to jump into a brief review of artists and schools policies. Now, to just set us off, I want to remind you that our sessions are being recorded, and both the slide deck that we're sharing and the the presentations that we're having will be available as the slide deck as a PDF and the presentation as a video link at Bunnell Arts website under the Artists and Schools tab. And I think Sharlene and I discussed that you don't need to take notes on anything that you see in the slides, because you can just look at those, right, as a PDF. But take notes on everything else that you don't see. Some of the things that are very important for us to stress is that at Bunnell's website, there are a whole ton of resources. And I just want to go there really quick for a moment, so that right now under programs, I've just tabbed down to the Artists and Schools tab at bunnellarts.org. And at this tab, you see these very basic information that's important to the program. And you can see that we have tabs for school requirements, and that is if you're a teacher. This is where Holly, for example, could go to find out under this tab. Here's a checklist for the schools. Here's the state teaching artist roster. This application is a third tab in green in the center of the page, where the school applies. And all of these resources are meant to be very accessible and straightforward. This is a one-page application that helps us connect with the school to learn what they want to study, and perhaps with whom, because they may already have an artist in mind, or maybe they don't and they want some advice. There's also the MOA, or the Memorandum of Agreement, which is the contract that we provide to the school, the artist, and the district. And it clarifies what the commitment is, how many hours, what the pay is. We don't really need to run over this right now with a fine-tooth comb. The point that I'm trying to share with you is that the resources for this program are all available at Bunnell's website, and we're going to talk over some of them for sure. Going back here, let's see, to the final report is something that we'll discuss toward the end of Sharlene's presentation. And this is just the school requirements. Artist requirements, that actually was the first tab I hit inadvertently, and then the application for schools, which I've already shown you. But here you can see that the first of the 4 sessions has been uploaded to YouTube, so you can click on that and see the first week's presentation, as well as all the slides of the PDF. We haven't quite put up the second week yet. I should say we have, but we haven't put up the slide deck yet, excuse me. And then next week we'll have this week's presentation. So that was the main thing I wanted to show you that's on our website. Then just very briefly to sketch out the skeleton of the program. It always begins with the school submitting to us an Artist in Schools application. And I briefly clicked on that one-page application. The next step is matching the school with an artist who's on the state teaching artist roster. You may not have an artist in mind. You might, as a school, just know that there's a media or a theme that you want to study, and then I will connect you with an artist. And to do that, I need artist lesson plans or a brief program description. So that is why, even if you haven't taught before, or you might not yet be on the teaching artist roster, it's super helpful to know who is interested in teaching what. It could be that Maria has an idea related to painting, or Jim related to drumming, and Daniel might have a vision related to puppetry. The important thing is to connect me with what age group, any themes, any materials, any specific times of year that you're interested in teaching or can't teach. Anything you want to offer me will just help me link a school to possibilities. After I've connected the school and the artist, then we're going to negotiate a schedule. And that will be something like the week of December 5th through 10th, or all of the Mondays in December, or all of the Tuesdays in December and November, that kind of thing. Then when we've agreed on a schedule and completed the memorandum of agreement, the residency can begin. We want to have those agreements in place a couple weeks ahead of time at minimum. And once the residency is over, then I will invoice the school for the materials and pay the artists after the reports are received. So that's like very broad strokes. Now we're going to kind of break that down in today's discussion. And as we move along, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. I think I've clicked on the next slide 3 times. Now I'll finally talk about it. A typical residency, because we have many small schools, is 40 hours, 20 hours of preparation, meeting, lesson planning, setup, cleanup, and reporting, and 20 hours of hands-on instruction time. What it typically looks like is 4 or 5 hours a day of teaching in the class, and then 20 hours sprinkled between advance, during, and post-instruction time related to all of the preparation and reporting. Residencies can be this short if less than 100 students are participating. Once you get over 100, we try to get an 80-hour residency. And once you get over 200, we try to get a residency that might even be 120 hours. So those are goals, and they're often limited by schools' budgets and artists' availability. So we just have students' best interest in mind with the maximum amount of contact time with the artist by creating residencies that are as whole as possible. Now we're going to jump into lesson planning with Sharlene and anything that she might have thought along the way while I was giving you that broad orientation. Thank you.
Well, I just first wanted to say what a wonderful group of people. I feel like I can learn just as much from you guys as I'm going to present today. So at the end, if you have something that you feel like you should share with everyone, let us know. We first have the anatomy of a whale. And yeah, if you can do the clicking, that'd be great. So this is a lesson plan template that's on the Bunnell website page for artists. And let's see if I can get a little bit bigger here. So if you're not familiar with lesson planning, it can be cumbersome, but if using a template helps. But how I do it is I usually figure out what I want to teach, and then break it up by lesson days, and then I go backwards and I fill this out. And I am trying to see it a little bit bigger on my screen.
You can also make it bigger.
Yeah, let's just make this bigger. Ah, there we go. Estimated time, visualize conceptual skills, multiple intelligence. Yep. Okay. Can you go to here? Go to the next page.
Yeah. It was just to point out, of course, you know, that
Right.
you would adapt this for whatever media, whatever theme, whatever multiple forms of intelligence that you think this residency could cultivate.
Mm-hmm.
Why is my slide not advancing? Oh,
There
I
you
have to do that. There we go.
And I'm going to talk a little bit. Okay, so the materials, the fine art standards, we have in the slide deck a link to them, so you can have those, as well as there's one here. And then I'm going to show you just shortly of a way to do this with Ludia, with AI. That it's you can type in your lesson plan and it'll tell you which of the Alaskan Fine Arts standards it hits. This is one of my new favorite toys to fill this part out. And then prerequisite skills, teacher preparation, introduction.
I'm excited for Sharlene to share that, because honestly, artists know about art. They know about so many things related to technique and materials and concepts, but teaching artists may not be aware of the Alaska Fine Art Standards, right? It's curriculum out of central office in the state of Alaska. And so it's like, how do I explain and defend what I'm doing? And this is important for, you know, for backing from your, you know, the rest of the school community, the other teachers. So fine art standards are critical to place in your lesson plan. Okay, shall I pop back to the
Yeah.
slide deck, Sharlene?
Yeah,
okay,
please. And I don't know how, because there's quite a few veteran teachers here. If Universal Design Learning has been around for decades, and they're the ones who created Ludia. And Universal Design Learning, in a summary, is students aren't misbehaving and students aren't not learning. It's your responsibility as a teacher to figure out how to reach students in different ways, whether it's visual, whether it's written, whether it's with more hand gestures or movement. And so they're trying to help you figure out how can you reach students who don't seem like they're paying attention. And so it's just a turn on the approach of learning and teaching. And Ludia, I just came back some months ago from Seattle at a conference put on by the Kennedy Center for Arts for students with disabilities. And this was presented, and I was at the table with principals, and they all got so excited. So that's why I'm excited to show you. And then we have the Alaskan Cultural Standards that we just mentioned. And then we have the Kenai Peninsula Art Standards. And so in your final reporting, you need to link your lesson to both of these. And if you can click on to Ludia, because you have the access.
You know, if we could just, Sharlene, first
Yes.
just click on the cultural standards, because we didn't
Sure.
really touch on that.
Sure,
and
sure.
we
Go
have been in our recent presentations. And this is just placed here because we want to really provide culturally responsive and relevant art curriculum. And when we have such a diverse and varied state of, several different indigenous nations, for example, it can be a complex question of how to do that appropriately and responsibly. And so this is just a very great resource. And it's actually super boiled down and I think fairly accessible. And the main thing it's attempting to do is create an atmosphere of respect that reflects traditional ideas about working in relationship to students in a good way and not making assumptions about how they might be comfortable and what they should be expected to share. So I want to encourage every artist when they're designing their lesson plan, not just reporting, as Sharlene has pointed out, it's true, but in the designing for sure, to just take a peek at these and think about in what way you can demonstrate relationships between your lessons and the worldviews of local and statewide cultural communities. So I'm going to pop back to our Lydia. Is that where you want me to click next?
No, you were doing you might as well go and show them the art standards from the peninsula.
Okay, go ahead and pop in there.
Well, yeah.
Okay. So this is a big and important document that provides everything from instruction on how to use the art standards to the history of their development. And I think rather than getting really overwhelmed once you're in the lesson plan design, I would just encourage each artist to read this ahead of time. Go ahead and create your lesson. And then as Sharlene says, think about reverse engineering your lesson with these standards in mind. And I think Lydia is one way that she's going to, illuminate the ways that you can do that. But the Alaska Art Standards have these 4 overarching standards of creating, connecting, presenting, and responding that are critical to all media. And then they're broken out in terms of each of these standards. And actually, it's very simple and approachable. It's just being aware that when you teach, you're not just teaching how to make something, but helping the teacher and the students understand some of these other evaluative, relational, and imaginative and interpretive ways to perceive and support the work they're making and the work that others are making in the classroom. And so, I mean, actually, it's a document that is many pages long, but really, I think the most important thing is just to read it through, highlight questions, ideas that you might have, concerns. You're always welcome to reach out to me. And we don't want this to be burdensome. We just want your art, your lesson plan to be relevant to these standards and to understand that the whole point of the standards is to ground the studio practices within broader themes that are critical to assimilating these lessons through a variety of different perspectives: kinesthetic, visual, intellectual, and so forth. So this is just a resource for you. And honestly, even at the district level, they don't want it to be burdensome. There have been many discussions about whether teachers or principals should be doing this for the lesson plan instead of the artists themselves. But I actually think it's good, even in the outset, for the artists to be aware of that. And then contextualize their lesson a little bit by saying, here are the standards that I'm reinforcing in my lesson. But most of all, to just really focus on the lesson. Okay. Charlene, I'm going to let you.
Okay, well, you're the master. Thank you for going over that. I think what we're really trying to do is just show you the whole world that's out there for you, and then for you to be able to know where all these resources are. So if you can click on Ludia.
Yeah, boy. Whoops. Let me go back.
And you can do it up here.
I'm
That's
so
fine.
lame. Okay. Here we go. Clicking on Ludia.
Okay. And then do talk to Ludia.
Okay.
And while you're doing that, so I sat there at this conference and everyone was excited. I'm like, I put a note in my book and like, okay, I will when I have time, go ahead and check it out. And just not that excited about it. And so for this presentation, I went in and started playing with it, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much. This is so fun. I kept playing with it and adding more. So I'll show you, and then I'm going to give you guys a chance to do it, so that I know every time you go to a conference or a workshop, you get all these great ideas, but unless you have a chance to actually play with them and get the app on your phone or your computer, then you kind of forget about it. So it's a really powerful vehicle. So like I said, it was through Universal Design Learning that designed it. And it's meant to be, like most AI, as a conversation. And someone asked what Ludia stands for, and I don't know. I'm curious, and I'll try to find out. So you just have a conversation. So I was going to say let's take a lesson that someone around here. Let's do a puppetry. So lesson plan. So if you can type, Asia, that would be great.
Okay.
So lesson plan for puppetry for sixth to, or well, we'll do third through sixth grade, using Alaskan cultural standards, Alaskan cultural standards. And then you can say Kenai Peninsula Borough School District art standards.
And I'm going to say fine arts standards. Yeah.
Okay.
And I noticed Susan has a question. I just wanted to encourage you guys to use that chat, and I'll monitor that.
Yeah, if you can do the chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what this one there is. Oh, so this time it's actually listing specific to it. You can play when you play with it, before you put the art standards, you can just ask for a lesson plan. Okay. So you see how it okay, there we go. It told you I got it into the idea of using the lesson, the standards. There you go. So it goes ahead and tells you the link of the standards, and so you can read about them. It also gives you what problems might come up and solutions. Suggestion, knowledge to learning. It also, you can ask questions too of what steps for the lesson plan. Steps. Plan. Yeah. There you go. I got
Oh, I love, can I just interrupt for a minute to
Yes.
say, I love how it says explore cultural stories. So that
Yes.
is the perfect departure point, for example, for a non-native artist to provide a very relevant lesson plan that, for example, looks up, local mythologies in Dena'ina or Sugpiaq culture, for example. You could do a fantastic lesson plan that's on the story of Sedna, because incidentally, the story of Sedna is a woman who, tried to crawl back into the boat and her fingertips were chopped off by her father. This is why we see tattoo across the fingers of indigenous women who come from this cultural background. And all of the creatures of the sea were made from her fingertips. So it could be a fabulous departure point for a finger puppet lesson plan, for example. It's a great way to learn about local mythology, right? So the minute you think of what cultural stories from this area, are apropos to puppetry, to drumming, to painting, then suddenly you are, becoming culturally relevant. It's very interesting. It's meaningful beyond the art lesson itself, to speak in terms of history, culture, sociology. So anyway, I got excited.
It's okay.
I mean, Daniel's in the room, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't help it. This happened last year when Abigail Kokai was teaching at Fireweed, and they wanted to do fairy tales. And I'm like, let's look at some indigenous fairy tales. Why do we have to do, Mother Goose and Snow White? And they had the most exciting unit, and they were working with indigenous fairy tales. So
That's awesome. And you can type in, I just realized I got overzealous and put 3 things in there. When you first start the conversation, you can just say, but now we're in a conversation. You can just say lesson plan for puppetry, and then you can add with the cultural standards, and then you can ask for the Alaska, the Kenai Peninsula art standards, and lesson steps, crafts needed, objectives. There you go. So it's popping up actually step-by-step lessons. And what I like about it, so I've been teaching for a while, and when I did it, it actually put up a couple of ideas that I hadn't thought of in terms of reaching other students, that maybe I do a demonstration, but then I'm done with the demonstration. Some students need to have it, that step-by-step process written down for them so that they keep going back and referring to it. And so that was suggested in here. The other thing you can do with Ludia, and we'll figure out a way of saying this, is saying, if you have discipline problems, or, since you're new to the classroom, you can ask Ludia, help with your puppet lesson. A student is not paying attention, or a student is causing trouble. So you can type that in, like a student is, not paying attention during the puppet lesson. What suggestions do you have?
rearrange seating to create a more intimate setting for puppet activities. Engage students in interactive storytelling. I have to interrupt for another moment.
Please
okay,
do.
I have a 25-year-old who keeps telling me, Mom, you need to start using AI. And I'm like, Jake, I do not want to use AI. I'm disgusted. I'm intimidated. And he's like, no, Mom, this is going to allow you to do your best work. You do not need to spend your time writing things like this. Use AI for that. Then you do you, because there's no one else who can do what you do. And it's very interesting to me. I've never even went here, Charlene. You're dragging me down a very important rabbit hole that I have been avoiding.
Well,
But
yes.
interesting. It's actually
Yeah.
very interesting.
And so it's so rich. It's so rich. And I like it because there's AI, but this is AI programmed with UDL in mind. So it's even richer for teaching. And like I said, you can then ask it, why don't we ask for Kenai, what are the standard art, what are the Kenai Peninsula fine art standards being used in the puppet lesson for grades 3 through 6? Because I feel like it hasn't hit that. I asked too many things at once.
Mm-hmm. Oops, holy cow. Sorry, that's a lot of information.
It is. All this is, and I'm not trying for us to read everything. I'm just trying to show you how you can how you can access information. So see, it's breaking it down for you, what fine art standards from our area it's hitting. And it's really nice to do this. Like her son said, if you do this, then it allows you to focus on this instead of reading that document, which is good to look at that document, but it's nice to just have it give you this information. Then you can read it and then say, oh, okay, how do I do that more, or how is this relevant to me, and how can I put this into my classroom, and then also my reporting. And someone's asking, what is POE? POE is the company that is providing Ludia. So it's just the platform that's holding it. And also, I didn't mention, this Ludia is free and there are no paywalls. At no point will you be asked to pay money for it. It will always be free.
Susan has discovered what Ludia means. UDL plus.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. And Holly points out that Magic School is another resource that's a great tool for creating lesson plans and presentations.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly.
Like I said, I know I'm going to learn a lot tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing. All right.
So let's move on. So okay, let's go out of this.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the next page, what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to do it yourselves, because what I was saying is that so many of the times after you do a presentation, you don't have the time to do it. So I want to take a moment for everyone to try to log on to Ludia themselves. And then just ask a simple question of like a lesson plan that you'd like, or just a disciplinarian problem you've had. So you can click on to the Ludia and we could help you guys get it on your system. So everyone, if you can click on that, hopefully this works in practice. And please let us know if you're having issues or.
I'm unclear on how each of us is going to do this. Are you wanting us just to open up a separate tab somewhere?
Yeah, I was wondering
on website
on your computer.
Okay, go to Benel's website and go in.
No, you should be able to use the link on the slideshow. Is it allowing that?
Yeah. Oh, I might need to.
We can't all use that though.
Right, let me just paste the link for it in the chat. So I'm gonna
Oh.
open up a brand new.
Smart idea.
Here's where it is. I'm gonna put it in the chat and then you can just go there.
Thanks, Susan, for the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes my screen doesn't want to give me the chat because where did it go?
Okay, let's see.
I'll find it. This might not take too long.
Here, I have access to that. Let's see.
Do you have access to it? Why isn't it popping up for me? You just lose it sometimes. Oh, here it is. Okay, got it back. All right, chat to everyone. Okay, there is the link. ho.com/Ludia.
I just wanted to take the time so that way if people have problems getting onto it, we're here to help people get onto it.
And don't hesitate to speak up or paste in the chat if you're having difficulties getting there.
Sharlene, you still on the phone?
Yes, Dad.
Fire is going out.
Just take about 3 more minutes to give you all a chance. Let us know if you're not having success. So I think whenever you're ready to reconvene us, we could do that. Char, I noticed that it took me about 4 different, as you know, I paint and draw as well. And so I'm curious about teaching drawing on the right side of the brain techniques to kids. And it took me about 4 times typing it in different ways to finally get like a lesson plan. At first I got all this stuff about barriers and just being persistent.
The first thing, because the purpose is for UDL, so that's what they keep emphasizing at first. And so yeah. What question did you finally ask that gave you the lesson plan?
I just said lesson plan, drawing on the right side of the brain, 4th grade.
Yeah.
But I think I probably had 3 other words in my initial query.
Right. I think
Anyway.
being direct. I just wanted to know, pretty cool. I was just wondering if people were able to get on, and did they find that valuable?
Yeah, this is Jim. I didn't have any problem getting on. It did ask for a sort of a login, so I just went in through my Google email. Yeah, I did notice I asked a couple of pretty generic questions on different subjects, and the answers were sort of similar. They were like a similar starting point that it starts with. So I hear what you're saying about it, emphasizing some principles at first about UDL, but I like the idea that it gave me like these 3 little options at the bottom. Which would you like to explore more? Putting culture into your lesson plan, appealing to diverse learning styles. And so it gave me the easy options to say, how do I get a little further in? And kind of led me in a little bit. So yeah, thanks for showing me that. Pretty interesting site.
You're welcome.
I can't believe what a huge time saver and empowerment this could be for teachers.
And Susan has her hand up.
I put a little bit in the chat. Yeah, it definitely worked. I'm the kind of person who likes to sift through a ton of stuff to figure out what the good stuff is, whether I'm at the thrift store or reading a book or, and so, when I do that with my students, like even when we're just working on reading strategies, like we go through and we read, and then we highlight, and then we highlight with a second color to find the really good stuff. And so I feel like I just typed in like oral history stories, 8th grade, and then it asked me about elders. And I clicked on that one, and then it started doing all the other stuff. And it's like, and I already try to incorporate lots of things like with multiple intelligences and different learning styles, diversity, neurodiversity and stuff. And so I was looking at that and I'm like, whoa, it was just all the stuff that's already floating around in my head in an absolute smoothie blender chaos, but it was organized. And so I'm like, oh, I could just like pick through this. And then after you said it again, I just typed in lesson plans.
Yeah.
And it popped up. Day 1, day 2, day 3, little things like, practicing the vocabulary ahead of time, practicing how to do interviewing ahead of time, before you meet with the elders, making sure it's a comfortable setting, when the elders come in. So things that I would have considered, but okay. And Asia, when you said your 25-year-old Jake is that your son?
Yeah.
Okay, my 23-year-old Jake has not been convincing me yet to do this, but I might have him use it for his business. But he's all like, he's all savvy about posting stuff all the time online. And I'm like, dude, I don't even have social media. I don't even have Facebook. I do no social media except look at other people's. And now I just did this and it was like, holy crap. Now I get why people want to do this. I like to write everything myself, but why the hell do I do that?
I guess that's the point, is that it's like doing it for something that you're spending a lot of time putting together makes you realize the value of it.
To me, that's way more exciting to think about the fact that then I can just focus on gathering the supplies for my art and like getting that stuff together, getting the space ready, getting the kids excited and not, I love developing curriculum, but this is like.
Yeah.
Well, the thing too is, most artists that I know are neurodivergent, and the idea of having to sit down and create a lesson plan is a serious impediment to getting involved in teaching. So they're people, they're materials people, they're concept people, but the whole idea of creating a
lesson plan,
an outline, it's just a killer. So this is good.
Great. So let's, I was excited and I'm so happy to share that. And if you have questions along the way, you can ask more about it. And we're going to do a couple of paint tips and then go into classroom management. These are just some things from teaching for a while. And though there's a lot of you who've been teaching for a while, so it might be redundant for you. Tempera is an easy cleanup paint. I had an attitude against tempera for a long time, but it actually is really good quality. And then because often I'm in places where water is not in my room, a gym, the library, so I do it where I have a paper plate, and then once a brush becomes blue or it becomes green, it stays that color, and the kids just share the brushes that way. And that seems to help a lot with cleaning, and yeah, that just helps a lot. And then just having the tables, there's always at schools rolls of these big rolls of paper, and just taping them so you don't have to spend so much time cleaning the table. Okay, Asia, next, please. I've done it so many different ways of sharing. We've done in the hallway. On the bottom left is one version, like a little gallery style. And then what's really nice is a way for the kids to interact with the art. And the middle paper here came from McNeil, and they gave the students some stickies, and they would go around and say, okay, which was my favorite one? And they put a pink sticker on it, and which one had the best craftsmanship, and which one looked like the most time was spent, and which one was the most original. And then on the top left, I've changed it depending on my lesson. So the top left one is when I was teaching acrylic paint, layering acrylic paint. I call it my pizza acrylic. And so which was your favorite? And we had numbers on each picture. So they just wrote down their numbers instead of having sticky. So it's a different way of doing the same way. And I would have two students in pairs. And if it's a school that you're doing a 3rd through 6 or kindergarten through 6, that we pair younger students with older students, and they go around and talk about their paintings. Which one is your favorite, and which one has you can see layering, because that was the point of the lesson. And then on the far right, that's one was trash art and one was journaling. So we just had, because they didn't have wall space, we presented it on tables and from the ceiling. All right, next. All right, Asia.
So this is just a review of some things we've touched on before, but when a residency is scheduled with you, you want to look back over the school's application and connect, in with the themes that the school has pointed out, and connect in with the coordinator, which is usually the principal, to review particular goals that they might have for this residency, and expectations and needs can be a part of that. Something that you might be aware of, and I'm just being cued by the phrase special needs, is that in our district, special needs students are completely integrated with the classroom in most instances, and they will have aides who will be supporting them so that you can focus on doing what you plan to do, but you can also assume that you really will have diverse students, neurologically and intellectually in your classrooms, and that the aides will be supporting your lesson in a sense that makes it appropriate and accessible for the particular student that they're working with. You don't need to shift gears. The idea is to mainstream those kids in the classroom, but it's really important to be aware that they will be in the room. Sharlene pointed out, you might be teaching in a gym, you might be teaching in a library, you might be moving from class to class. If in the very unfortunate situation that you are moving from class to class, you might request an art cart or a trolley or a dolly or a few of them to move things like drums or stacks of art supplies, just to be aware that is it. Whenever possible, you should try to have a space that can be set up as your studio for the duration of your residency, where students are coming in and you are not moving your materials out of the class.
And another point to that, and later I mentioned again, is the big need, especially in remote areas, to be flexible. I was teaching in Nanwalek, and my room, they couldn't unlock the door. It was stuck. So at the last minute, we went and set up in the gym, which was also where they were setting up for community photographs. And in a gym, kids like see big space and they want to run around. And so it's just trying to go with the flow. Things seem to always it's rare that everything is exactly how you planned it when you first started preparing for the lesson.
It's so funny how the older we get, I mean, we want our kids to be adaptable and go with the flow, but we as adults can really have a hard time with that. And there's never not an opportunity to model that adaptability in that capacity.
Oh, and here's more about the remote schools. To discuss housing, meals, transportation, internet service. Don't assume anything. And then ask for supplies. Sometimes you think, I just take for granted, like there's going to be scissors and markers and pencils, and there may not be those, or maybe they have them in the storage and they're not sharpened, and the students don't seem to have the pencils. And then I always seem to now carry packaging tape with me, because that always seems to be like the solution for everything. So just to be clear what you need and the quantity, and then within your tape budget. Yeah, you have a budget for $250 in materials. And if you're staying overnight, be prepared to sleep in a classroom floor or in the library, or and not have internet service. And then for fly-in schools, make sure, well, I try to check the weather before I go, so that you're not stuck, because this happens often. But I always bring backup stuff, and keep the day I'm supposed to come back, I never plan anything, so in case I have to stay longer. And schedule the second to last flight, and having totes with lids, so that it can be carried on and off the little tiny planes, and things can be stacked on it, really is helpful. And I even bring paintbrushes. I bring napkins. Try to bring whatever you think you need to bring with you, unless you ask and find out for sure that they have it. Next slide, please. So you're supposed to ask if volunteers are available. Most schools don't have volunteers for you. So I just have students help me. I'm very clear what I need them to. Give yourself enough time, 10 minutes before you're ending, so that you can have them clean up, and then they're ready to go. And often some schools, when they're doing your schedule, they'll literally say, this class ends at 10:30 and the next class starts at 10:30. So it's up to you to dismiss that class, the first class, 10 minutes early, or 5 minutes early, and so that you have enough time for that transition. That's a specific link coordinator, right? Schedule workshop, schedule the final sharing date. Okay, and the final sharing date is like the slides I showed you about how to present as like a gallery. Next slide, please.
Just quickly
Sure.
Before we do, and I think we may have touched on it in a previous, maybe the first
teacher
session of the
workshop?
academy, right? but just if you would talk a little bit about what that is.
I will tell you that Asia's not going to want to hear this. Most schools don't want to do this. They don't they don't want to do a teacher workshop. They just kind of let it slide because no one has time. So it's um it's easier to have the teacher workshop during maybe a scheduled meeting that they always have. So it's not like it's an additional time that they have to meet. AIS likes to have it before your lesson so that teachers know what you're doing and they can actually be helpful to you. That often doesn't happen. And so you're trying to show them, I look at it as, when I'm gone, are they ever going to be able to teach these kids what I taught? So you're trying to give them the tools to how to teach the material you're showing. And so if you're bringing equipment, like I have special paintbrushes and then drums and other special materials, you might present during this some material that they can do during their class that's similar to what you're doing. And it's usually
And
like an hour.
Such good points, Charlene. And something I wanted to mention that's been a helpful adaptation for these remote schools, like say you're going to do a residency in Nunwalek or Tyonek, we can arrange a Zoom meeting with the teachers where you can do something like
Nice.
a slide talk or, you know, an orientation, even if it's, you know, they're not getting their hands dirty, but they're really getting the big picture of what the heck you're going to bring in and how they can support that. It makes all the difference in making the time efficient and having their support for you when you're in their classroom.
And it because there's a lot of other people who've been teaching for a long time. When I teach, I take over the classroom, and the teacher is just there to help if there's any kind of disciplinary problems or in other ways, maybe passing out materials. But it's important that you're commanding the classroom. And you can ask the teacher ahead of time. I'm getting into something that we're going to do later, but of how do they communicate with their class, or just talk to the teacher. Is there something that you need to know about any of the students, so that you're ready to take over the classroom?
At the same time, you want to convey that they are fully expected by you to be present and that they should never leave you in the classroom without, you know, like, and go have a smoking break or something. Like
The principals are pretty good about letting the teachers know that.
Sometimes things
Oh,
are,
really?
yeah.
Okay.
It's just important to, you know, reinforce that you expect them to be there.
Or appreciate their help, I think is a nice
Yes.
way of saying it.
Nice way to say it.
I have about 4 slides about classroom management because I've seen people go into classrooms and having a hard time commanding classes, and I actually see it. I see it with teachers who are I'm visiting their classroom, and they themselves can't figure out how to get their students together. And the last time I was part of one of these AIS trainings, it was a lot of people who've never taught. So I feel a little, since there's people who've been teaching for a long time, I'm sorry if this is a little redundant for you, but we'll go ahead with it. So the first ones are just overall concepts, modeling ideal behavior, and using, it all seems very common sense, but sometimes it's good to be reminded of these. Using polite language, maintaining eye contact, keep your phone in your pockets, let others speak uninterrupted, respond respectfully. Students at all ages really key in on this. They really notice, are you treating them like not an equal, but are you treating them with respect, and not talking down to them? Students really appreciate that. Listen, when someone has a suggestion, listening to them sincerely. And also if there's a problem, not to punish the whole class, but asking and being friendly. And your manner is really important. It's commanding but quiet and respectful. And if someone has a question or a point, just to sincerely listen to them. Okay, and pre-correct, remind students to prevent a problem like it. So if you need help, please raise your hand and patiently wait for me to come to your desk. The next slide, please. Class, okay, let the class know if you have any rules. And I start with mine. I don't want to hear, I can't, I'm not good at, that looks terrible. And actually the teachers class workshops, they're the worst students. They will say this all the time and they won't pay attention. And I joke with kids because usually someone says, oh, this, I can't do, this is terrible. And I say, oh, did I just hear I'm trying my hardest? And we all joke about it just to remind them that that's what, and I always say, well, why are we in school? We're here to learn. You're not supposed to know everything. That's why we're doing this. And I ask them to listen, follow directions, raise hands, and be conscious of this, because a lot of times people will say you should raise your hand and not speak. And if a bunch of kids start shouting the answer, we answer back. So if you want that to happen, okay. And if you're not comfortable with that, or maybe at one point you said, okay, I can hear, you can call out your answer, or right now, I would like people to raise their hands. Just let people know what you expect. And keeping hands, feet, and object to yourself. And this is my second big rule. The first one and this one, no painting on self or others. And obviously I'm an artist, there's a visual artist. So there's other, maybe for drumming, it's don't touch something until I ask you to. If intentionally done, you'll be asked to leave a classroom. It's really important to let these things be known ahead of time, because you'll turn around and someone's painting their hand today. Someone is painting their hand gray. So it's, and to follow suit with it. And this is really helps for success. That's why I put it highlighted. Give clear directions by breaking them down into simple steps. So maybe in the beginning, I give, I say, okay, we're going to take this piece of tinfoil. We're going to cut for tinfoil sculptures. We're going to cut in these lines in 3 places. We're going to scrunch it here. We're going to make arms and a head, and I'm doing a little demonstration. Then I go back and then I do it step by step with the classroom. All right, pick up your piece of tinfoil and your scissors. Now cut on the lines. Okay, and then you kind of wait for everyone to catch up. Now I want you to crumple the head and then crumple the arms and crumple the legs. All right, and and if someone has an issue. So when you have everyone go step by step, it really helps. When I first started teaching, I saw a video in one of my first artists in schools, a little workshop, and it was someone teaching drumming outside of from Juneau. And she had them, before they even could touch the drums, she had, first you do this, then this. I was watching the video just dying, like, just let them touch the drums. And finally, but by the time they got to that drum, they knew exactly what was expected of them. They felt safe. They felt clear. And I do the same. That's why I put this picture. You see everyone holding their brush in a certain way in Chinese style. So by the time they are actually going to paint, they know exactly what they're going to do and what's expected of them. And they then usually there's not an issue. Visual checklist, that came from actually Ludia, of having on the board, write down the checklist, because maybe someone needs to refer back to it. And I just added, after teaching the past couple of weeks, survey the room. Sometimes there's some kids, all of a sudden you see them like getting antsy and they're not really into the lesson. And so then reflect for a moment. Is it because students aren't understanding what they're supposed to be doing? Is it that we've been doing it for a long time and they like can't think anymore and we just need a moment to pause and stretch? And so just taking that moment. Okay, next slide, please. And here's just some more management tips. I see Charlotte is cleaning up her table. And it's amazing when you say that. When you say, oh, thank you for putting your trash in the trash can, because everyone said, oh, she's doing that. Oh, okay. And so you're not telling the other kids, like, can you pick up the trash? Why aren't you doing that? You're doing it from a positive perspective. And plan reminders. All right, we have 2 minutes remaining, and then we're going to clean up. So, because if you just say, okay, stop, then they, people are like rushed and they feel like, wait, I didn't finish it. And so you can give them a warning of that we're going to clean up and what's expected of them afterwards. Another good one is someone's really not paying attention. You can just stand by their desk and smile at them. And usually then they're like, oh, okay. It's like a cop car driving by you. You all of a sudden realize wait, what am I supposed to be doing? And nonverbal, sometimes just putting your finger and going like this is like, okay, to be quiet. And then one more time. Oh, when a bunch of students are like, they're running to the door for dismissal, and you're like, okay, let's try that again, and just have people sit down, and then, okay, let's go quietly, is a good way of doing it. Deadly quiet. Sometimes it's art. I don't mind kids talking most of the time. If it gets too loud, I'll just, ask them to lower it a little bit. But sometimes there's a part of the project where I really want them to concentrate, and it's called deadly quiet. And they all respond really well to this. This is not high school, this is elementary, but like if they say, okay, 5 minutes, and I tell them exactly what time on the clock and where the hand is going to be. And I said, for 5 minutes, we're deadly quiet. And just to, for people to be quiet and focus. It helps also other students if there's too much talking. Sometimes it helps them. Some students also might need the earphones on there so that they can't handle all the noise. And then I'm going to just remind one thing, because I see the blue glove. Some students have a problem with touching things. If they have, so I always bring gloves with me. And some people say they hate clay, and I just realize it's because they don't like the touch of it. So you can have the gloves. Oh, this is always a thing. The fine line between structure and exploration. So it is a fine line. So giving a detail of what instruction of what they're supposed to be doing. But then some kids will say, well, can I do it this way? Or they start exploring in a different way. And at that moment, you have to pause and think, okay, no, that's still within the boundaries of what I'm teaching. But then some students might take it a step too far. And so then you just need to let them know, well, that's not going to work because of this reason or that reason. So just really speaking to them and explaining why that would work or not work. So that's always a fine line, because you can quickly, I'll tell you one story of where things went completely crazy fast. I was teaching process art, which is already on the messy side of anything I teach. And we were doing with squeegees, painting. And then, and kids were squirting paint, and then paint started going in places where paint shouldn't be going, but the kids were so engaged. And so it was just how to like keep it going from too crazy. In that classroom, because she had so many students with IEPs, we put a big tarp on the floor. And because she decided that classroom teacher, because I talked to each teacher as we're going through the process, that she felt like those students, it was actually really good for them to explore that crazy. So we did that. In other classrooms, that was not the environment. So we pulled it back a little bit, and I didn't let them pour as much paint. So finding that fine line. Next slide, please. And in the classroom, this is where I find a lot of teachers, they say, okay, class, or class, and then kids are still talking, and then the teacher is just starting to tell them what to do, and most students are not listening. So you don't want to start talking until you really see everyone looking at you. So I will say there's a whole bunch of suggestions of how to get the class's attention. You can do, it's kind of universal in our school district. I hope this is not too loud. So just doing a clap rhythm, and then all the students clap back. And then there's, you can have a musical instrument to get everyone's attention. You'll just establish this in the beginning of your class and say, okay, this is what I'll use. Or you can say 3, 2, 1, all pencils down or voices off. Or you can do class, class, and most know class, class. You can say waterfall and they go shh. Or you can speak really quietly. That gets kids, but if the classroom's not too crazy, and then turn lights on and off. But what's most important, whichever way you do it, sometimes I'll say class, class, and they're so engaged, they're not hearing. And then you stop and say, let's try that again. Class, class. And they'll say class, class. And at this point, people are still like drawing, and you say, okay, can everyone please put their pencils down? All right. Can I see everyone's beautiful eyes looking here so I can make sure you hear me, so I can just say it one time and then give your instruction. But you really have to take the time and really have everyone stop and focus. Or you could even say, I didn't even write that one down, freeze. That's a really fun one. Okay, everybody freeze. And then say, okay, eyes on me. And then you can give the instruction. Okay. And
gosh, I'm just reminded, Charlene, like how important it is for the visiting artist to come in with whatever toolkit you feel comfortable and just introduce that at the beginning. You know, my name is Peter. I'm from Homer, you know, and I'm going to be teaching you about this, and this is how it's going to go down. Like, these are the steps we're going to do, and this is how I'm going to get your attention, you know, all this stuff. It's
and
just
then,
setting.
And then also what your real rules are. Like the painting on the body is a really big one but or you know, just with that you just have that very clear in the beginning. Yes, it is really really helpful. And I want to just stop here before we go to this slide. Go back to the other one because we're doing okay. I just want to open it. Does anyone have oh, someone said kids like salami. Stop and look at me. That's cute. A verbal interrupter, so the reminder is always helpful. Susan, can you tell me a little bit more what you mean, a suggestion?
Oh, like literally my first year teaching in the Kenai Peninsula District, I bought a package of dry salami, but I took the meat out and I rolled a newspaper up inside it because I had 30 kids in my last class of the day for language arts. And sometimes it was crazy, 37th graders, you know, end of the day. So I would have the salami roll and it just sat up there on the board and I'd smack my hand with it. Salami. Absolutely, they froze. And so I did not do it for years and years and years, but last year, I did not buy the dry salami, but last year I also had 37th graders in a Quest gifted language arts class at the end of the day, and 10 of them shouldn't have been in that class. 20 of them should have been there, but it was absolutely crazy. So I explained what salami was. They loved it. And all I had to do was say salami, instantly silent. So, you know, they'd like basically freeze, stop exactly what they were doing, look at me, and I don't know, they just liked it. So I'm like, hey, this ain't a cheesy request, you know, like play it up with some meat and cheese, you know. So
does anyone have any other about classroom management, something that they want to share that works for them, or a question or a worry? All right. I guess we're good to go. Let's go to the next slide. A couple of tips as you're going through. You get a printout of your schedule, and some days you have 3 of the class and the next day you have 2, and so it gets really confusing. Okay, I'm teaching lesson number 2 to this class. By the 4th day you're like, okay, lesson 2, and then this one's day 4. So I just write notes. And then also some classes do things faster than other classes. Oh, and that's a reminder. I taught a sculpture class at Voss, and it took them like a whole time. And then I taught it to Nikolaevsk, and it's like a really tiny class. And then they did it so much faster. So when you're planning, just because a lesson took a certain amount of time in one school does not mean it'll work that at another school. And I always have backup lessons. I have projects and totes just in case I need like an emergency one, or I need to expand on my lesson, or if they finish early, because no class or students finishing at the same time. So what one class, since I was doing sculpture, I had just some color wire, and so I let them play with that while they were waiting for everyone else. I always have paper and pencils for drawing for early finishers. And it's that fine line where I didn't want to tell, I had more than one activity, but I didn't want to start the second activity until the majority of the kids were finished with the first one. Because if you start telling them about a second one, those people who are in the first, who haven't finished, are going to go super fast through that lesson so they can get to the next one and do a really not a good job. So you're kind of waiting for everyone to kind of catch up a little bit, and then you can move on to the next project. And then for younger students, I just have a pile of storybooks on the floor, and some of them that are kind of relevant to what I'm teaching. And so when they're finished, they can come sit on the floor and look at the books. And then I also have some books that sometimes I read, like, okay, we're finished early, but we're done with today's lesson, so I'll read them a story if they're really young. And then take photo. This is the hardest thing to remember while you're doing your lesson plan when you're teaching, is to take photos. Also, ask the teachers which students are not allowed to have their photos taken. And one way I do it, because sometimes it's hard to know all the students who can you take a picture, who you cannot take a picture. I'll send my best photos to the secretary and ask them to tell me which photos I can use. That's another way of taking care of that. And you need, for your final report, also the coordinator needs photos for their final report, so you can share what you have and they can share with some of their photos that they have. Okay. And here's more about the final reporting. So you need to do a one-page narrative summary of the AIS unit. Asia, can you hop on and tell them a little bit more of what you're expecting for that one-page narrative?
You know, I'm actually looking for something that I can put directly into my reporting to our funders to describe what's happened in each school. And usually the best voice for that is the teaching artist. Sometimes it's the classroom teacher, and sometimes it's an anecdote, you know, that either one might share about something wonderful or interesting, a challenge, and how it was overcome in the classroom. It's simply what you did, how you did it. Challenges, highlights, and anecdotes are always appreciated. We want to have a copy of your teaching schedule, and then you have an online report. Before I hop into that, do you want to talk about the invoice that you have here, Sharlene?
Yeah, and also I want to back up also. When I was saying I take photos, I also just jot, whether it's on my phone or I always seem to have a scrap of piece of paper I put in my pant pocket, of like a quick note about the anecdote, because by the time I'm doing that reporting, I'm not remembering much, or so it just helps, like someone just said something really great during that, or something really sweet happened. So I try to write it down so that that way when I go to do my reporting later on, I have that there. And then on the right hand side is an invoice that I did for Resdolna in the springtime, and I like having examples of things, and so I shared this. So my information says as an invoice where it was, what it was, the date, the artist fee, and the and then the supplies, and then mileage. I gave you the more complicated one. Oh, and this one doesn't have a per diem on it. So some places I get a per diem if, let's say, I'm in Soldotna or Sterling, and then I get a per diem maybe, and that's all negotiated ahead of time. And I just write all that, and then I send it to Asia so that everything is clear. Some schools want you to give them, like Chapman wanted me to give them my my supplies to them separate invoice. So just speak to them and ask them what they want. Okay.
And the invoice is usually just corroborates the MOA. It's just another way to kind of cross-check and make sure we've covered mileage, which we will do up to $250, materials up to $250, the artist's fee, $12.50 a week, and so forth. That's just, it's a good cross-check.
Yeah.
We're just going to click into this online reporting tool. We now have it as a survey. And this is hopefully something that you'll be able to sit down and complete in like 20 minutes. Very basic questions. These are things we want to make sure. And in one sense, we're tracking how the program is working overall. Another we're tracking is how is it working for you in terms of your experience and support that you might need as a teaching artist to be able to stick with this program and have adequate, feedback to any problems, support for any problems you might be facing. If, for example, we see that your admin of this residency exceeded 20 hours, we have a problem. If it got up to 60, we know that you probably won't ever do this again. On the other hand, if it got to 40, we might say to you, this was a big commitment, but you've bushwhacked a path now through the lesson plan, through the dialogue. It's going to save you time for the future. So every time you teach Chinese ink brush painting, you have like a template for how to do that. The first time you did it, it was a huge excessive time commitment that looked like 40 hours. And perhaps as you move forward in the future, it'll look more like 15 for you. So it kind of works out somehow. That's what we're seeking to know, is how is this working for you? We want to make sure you saw your teaching schedule prior to the residency actually beginning. And then we want to learn, about how the school liaison, the principal, or the classroom teacher who helps create and coordinate this residency with you, were they responsive to you? There are situations that happen where who that person is in that role changes at the last minute, or there's emergencies and so forth. And we just need to know, how is this school doing in this program? Are they respecting your time, and are they supporting you adequately? The other things are just, simple, like how is the space? Did you have adequate lighting? Did you have the proper physical space? And so forth. And finally, the one-page narrative, and it's not to exceed one page, and it actually could be shorter as long as you address all of these questions. That's what we want to know. Discuss the media that you taught, who you taught. Like, did you have just second graders? Did you have everybody in the school? How the residency reflected the school's stated goals in their application, how it reflects cultural standards, art standards, the local cultural community, challenges that occurred during the program, and examples of student growth, as well as observations, feelings, and anecdotes. You might add that one-page report as an attachment, and finally, a copy of your lesson plan. Hit submit, and we're done with that part anyway.
Does anyone have questions? Back up for a second, please, Asia. Does anyone have questions on any of that final reporting? Yeah, Susan?
When things come in like transportation to other places, I mean, for example, I live in Sterling, so I mean, there's some reasonably close locations that are no big deal. I like going to Homer, going to Seward, going to anywhere on the peninsula doesn't seem too strange, although I might stay over. But what about like out into bush communities or things like that with the extra expense required? Just who books
It-
that? Who does all that?
I usually book the flight myself,
Okay.
because it's easier. And often I will pay for it and then get reimbursed
Okay.
for the flights. If that's not possible for you, then you can work with them and speak to Asia about that. But I usually I do it myself. And then where you stay in Nanwalek and Port Graham, they used to have apartments, but I think they're getting new teachers and they might not be available. So then you stay in the school. And then they will pay for, you can eat their food in the school, or you can bring your own food. But if, let's say, because like if Tustamina, I'm in Anchor Point, so Tustamina I will drive to but if anything that's more than 45 minutes, I usually stay overnight. And then the school will either have you stay at one of their community members will give you a free place to stay. Or one time, Soldaten Elementary just paid for me to stay in a hotel. And then you have a per diem about food, how much you can spend per day for food. But in the villages, there's no restaurants to go spend money at. Yeah, so it depends on where you're going. Susan?
Well, just thinking about that, like, well, first off, I have celiac, so I know I would probably be traveling with my own food.
Yeah.
How much is it? I have not been out I mean, I did teaching in rural Alaska, but it was Craig, and that's not the same as teaching out in the bush villages. So
Uh-huh.
I'm just really kind of curious about some of those things, like how often or how common would be somebody says, "Oh, come to our house for dinner," or
No, I've never been invited to dinner.
okay, okay,
One place when I was staying at, I'm trying to remember the name. It's right by Toke, right on the border. I stayed at a teacher's house, so she did feed me. Again, there
okay.
wasn't restaurants there, and she knew I was coming from a very far away place. But like at other school, like for Port Graham and for Nanwalek, there's a kitchen in the school. There's the kitchen that's for preparing student for meals, but that's not the one you use. It's usually the staff lounge or like the home ec kind of room that you can make your own food there, or a space, a room that has I think at Fort Graham, it was like a room that has a microwave. Like it just has a sink and a microwave. And so and a refrigerator. So
And
yeah.
so
And then,
for all your free time sort of ish, I'm just like trying to contemplate, like it's just your time to, in the evenings or whatever,
yeah,
right? Okay.
yeah,
Just depending on what might arise in the community.
well,
Just-
in Port Graham, I took for a long walk, and they have a couple of stores, and I chit chatted with local people at the stores. And by the time I got to I met someone just by her house, and then I was talking to someone at the store. And by the time I got to the store, they already knew I spoke to the person at her house. And they already knew who I was and that I was visiting. So that I did that way. And in Nanwalek, there's a store there, talk to people. Yeah. So I think it takes a while before you're actually going to be invited to their homes. That's not common. Mm-hmm. More questions?
Any questions that you have, and any time you're going to a place that you haven't been before, there are no dumb questions, and we're here to support you. Like, an experienced teaching artist like Sharlene or Eddie Wood will just request a per diem and do a shopping and fly in with their food. Other people will try to make do with what they can find in the local store, and maybe a combination of both.
The local stores are very expensive, but though I always have to go into the local store because it's a great way of meeting people, and the shopkeepers are always very friendly. And I buy one or two little things, but it's very expensive. Any other questions? Not necessarily just about so far what we presented? Anyone have like a quandary, like, oh, I'm on the fence, I might not do this because of this, or I wonder if I can do my lesson this way? This would be a great time to ask those kind of questions. Yeah. Okay. And we're on the next slide then, Asia. Thank you.
Okay.
All
This
right.
is, yeah, these are just links from our Indigenous Education Department. And Rachel Pyack, you'll remember, is the head of Indigenous Education for the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District, and she mentioned that she had several links, and I just wanted you all to see these, and they are, of course, in the PDF that's going to be available.
And then can you link, connect to the bottom one, the Kenai Peninsula Borough one? I just want to show them a couple of things. Because these resources are really wonderful. And I'm going to point out one in the second section says lessons from catalogs. Dick Blick, if people haven't explored this, they have a whole set of lesson plans, and you can do by discipline, by grade. And what's really fun, they not only have, just pick one and go on to the PDF. Okay. Okay, and go hit the PDF. There you go. They have, okay, and scroll down. They have the materials. You don't have to buy theirs, but they give you the quantity for a class of 24, which is really helpful when you're trying to figure out how much supplies you need. They give you what needs to be prepped. They give you the process and photos. And then down on the bottom, they give you the standards, national core standards. And some lessons they give you videos for as well. They're just the simple thing of like, okay, how much quantity, if you're doing for the first time puppetry or first time, you're just trying to figure out how much of a supply, they'll tell you about the supply. I guess I use these more when I do art camp than when I do artists in the schools, but sometimes I just did a sculpture lesson from them. So that's a great resource.
That's great. That's our last slide.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if there's questions or comments or I would be curious, you can do it in the chat or raise your hand. What was helpful about today's presentation and what was missing that you were expecting to see?
Excellent. Tomorrow is our last in this module, not tomorrow, next Tuesday, the 26th. And we will be circling back to Jennifer Romer, who's a former head of the elementary school social studies curriculum for Anchorage School District, and she was instrumental in getting an indigenized third grade Alaska Studies curriculum that she's going to share highlights of with us. And we will also be going over the state teaching artist roster application process so that you all can be prepared to put in an application and hopefully teach as a teaching artist. By joining that roster, you'll be eligible to teach throughout Alaska and, of course, in the Kenai Peninsula Borough where we really need you.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to point something out. Being on that star, I've been approached by schools that you never thought to even ask. And so it is pretty, it's used. Schools really do look at the list. And I interrupted someone. I'm not sure who. Thank you, Susan, for the comment.
And thank you all for continuing to join us for these lessons. And it's been nice to have a good core group that has sort of moved through this process. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week and in being in touch along the way if there's any questions that you have. Really, you're a great diverse group. It's really wonderful. We're learning, as Sharlene said, just as much. So thank you again.
And thank you, Jim and Holly and Susan and the rest of you. And if you do have specific questions, you can always shoot it to Asia and she can forward it to me. If afterwards you're like, oh, I didn't ask that question. Or what did she mean by?
Right.
And I'd be happy to share.
Well, thank you all. Thanks so much, Sharlene.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys. Have a lovely evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye now. Thank you.